You're listening to Your Magical Midlife. This podcast is for women who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-the-box thinkers. If you're a Gen X woman who never quite fit in, and probably never will, listen up. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and coach, and I'm here to guide you through the expansive, exhilarating, and sometimes exhausting crossroads that we find ourselves in at midlife. Whether you're a seasoned listener or just joining the adventure, think of this podcast as your hot pink convertible cruising down the highway of change. Together we'll navigate the sometimes baffling backroads of midlife and collect all the cool souvenirs along the way. Get in and buckle up. Our map may have flown out the window miles ago, but that doesn't mean we aren't going to have a blast. Let's hit the road and discover the magic just around the bend. Rosebud Woman was developed in response to women's unaddressed needs for beautiful, luxurious products that provide relief and pleasure for all women, whether it be for period pain, perimenopausal woes, or menopause symptoms. Intimate wellness products are often designed to use with a sexual partner or medicalized to treat a diagnosed issue. Rosebud Women feels ceremonial, like I'm doing a beauty ritual while addressing my 50-year-old body's needs. Their everyday honor balm is gynecologist tested and hormone free. It hydrates, conditions, and replenishes intimate skin. It's excellent for pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, and any other hormonal changes. Use the affiliate link in my show notes for 20% off. You can check out their products at www.rosebudwoman, that's ROSEWOMAN.com. Check out all their beautiful products and use the affiliate code in the show notes. Christine Marie Mason is the founder of Rosebud Woman. She's a futurist, yogi, tantrika, mother of 4, and grandmother. She's also an author and has written several books, including The 9 Gifts, The Invitation, and Reverence. She is deeply interested in women's wellness, spirituality, and the liberation of all people. This is an amazing interview that I am so proud to share with you. We cover everything from ceremony, spirituality, and how to live well. Please welcome to the show, Christine Marie Mason. First of all, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I am a relatively new entrepreneur, and what you've created is so inspiring to me and just mind-blowing.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. It's been total labor of love.
I bet, because it's a gorgeous products, a beautiful brand, and to be able to create something like that with the undercurrent of spirituality and sensuality and sacredness I'm so inspired. Thank you.
You get me. You got it. I was trying to explain, that you're like trying to justify your positioning. And, there are other people who solve those problems and it's very medicalized.
Yeah.
And it's not addressing like it sits in the whole system of the whole embodiment of women. So anyway, thanks for seeing it. Did you know my daughter is my co-founder?
I did not know that.
Yeah, she was there sort of advising me in the beginning on design stuff. And then during COVID, she came in to be head of operations. So she's 37 and we are having this like incredible intergenerational collaboration where she sees everything from sort of pre-postnatal, all the struggles with endometriosis, all the questions around IVF and all the things that like women in her cohort are dealing with. And I see all the things that my cohort is dealing with. And it's really a beautiful thing to be collaborating at that level with her. Yeah.
That's something that I'm trying really hard to create. I was a therapist, or I am a therapist. I'm a social worker, and I'm rejecting walking away from the medical model, of psychiatry. All my background is traditional psychiatry. So every feeling should be medicated away. Every emotion should be shut down. take this pill, shut it down, don't feel it, don't, it's all of that. And I had I had the beginnings of ovarian cancer, and I went in thinking that they were going to remove one ovary, and the doctor gave me a radical hysterectomy, which was violating and horrifying and so upsetting. And I'm still working on doing that healing work. But while I was on medical leave for my job, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be, if I had a dream job, it would be, I would be in a field with other women doing ceremonies and rites of passage. And I want to do this work with women in menopause. I want to create a program and a ritual to step them over the threshold from one phase of life into the next. And then I found your products, and I was like, this is exactly, this is this is what I'm trying to tap into. And so the work you're doing is just incredibly. I think there's such a call to connect, especially post-COVID.
I just put a link in the chat for you. You want to hop over and look
Yeah.
at that? I haven't shared this with anybody yet, but if you go to the end of this, I want to say rituals for the empty nest, rituals for croning, like end of the book, like 658.
Okay.
And there's what I'm calling the ritual sapiescence, like the ceremonial threshold for women, thanking the body, grieving, claiming, integrating, envisioning.
Oh, wow.
And and we couldn't be more aligned.
Yeah.
That so this is a new piece that I'm kind of organizing to get out there, maybe around the holidays. But it sort of lays out, what I think about in terms of approaching menopause when you've already spent a good chunk of your life doing inward investigation. You already know how to, like, that you're more than your body. You already know that you need to care for yourself at an integrated way, and you have some degree of practice, but it still hits you kind of intensely this stage.
Oh,
So
definitely. Thank you for sharing this with me. I'm very honored. Thank you.
yeah,
Is this like part of your next book, or this is your next
no,
book?
I have my next book is something called The 9 Lives of Woman. And
Mm.
I've been serializing it on where each chapter, it's like the 9 stages between birth and 100 reproductive, sexual, and sensual stages. And sort of the menopause period is like is stages four. Stage 5 and 6 is perimenopause and menopause. And then after that, there's 3 more stages, like postmenopause 1, 2, and 3, and they each have individual names, but they're supported by bigger all body stages of cell senescence at 62, at 78, where you are really entering. So really entering a new whole embodiment. And how do you navigate that stuff? Well, so that's the next book. But the yogis and menopause piece, I guess it could be part of the stage 4 and 5, but it's not really. It's more, I do workshops on this on the weekends. And
Right.
so I wrote it as a outline for that. And it just keeps getting fatter.
I love it. How did you get into this work?
Oh, well, this work is kind of like, what's this work, right? It's sort of, so I thought, I always felt when I was coming up, like initially, like this amazing mystical connection to everything that is. And that I was sort of tunneled, like channeled into doing more dominant culture kind of things. My mother died when I was really young, and my father raised me. And he had a very big preference for masculine embodiment, like linear thinking, economics, analytics, that kind of thing. And that's what was getting rewarded in my family and in my school system. So I kind of did that for a long time, but I felt that there was like some disconnect from my divine essence, as it were. And in my early 30s, I started really returning to that, like this yoga, dance, tantra, in conjunction with my life as a mother and a worker. And as I got more and more into these embodiment practices and esoteric practices, and it triggered like the ability to do what your job has been healing the family wounding, healing the intergenerational trauma. I started teaching yoga in prison
Oh,
and
wow.
really saw intergenerational trauma at work in that population and realized that all of my projections around separation was wrong. That led me into a trauma training program. And I understood sort of, oh, you've got all kinds of things that are living in you, like patterns around emigration, patterns around intergender violence, patterns around war, patterns around like it's all kind of living in you. And you've made all these adaptations in your family system. And probably the biggest one for me was the adaptations around being in a female body.
Mm.
And that a lot of those had to do with the expectation of violence and abuse or the confusion over like riding my cycles and not really having anywhere to turn to find out about that, or the shaming around sexuality or desire, like slut shaming, basically from an early age. And that kind of overshadowed the systemic cultural things like bias against being female in academics and in science and in work, but that all of my sort of core issues on freedom and liberation were tied up with gender. So I started to really work on that. Like, how do I find freedom while accepting and loving my body? And then I turned that into an inquiry around why was the vagina, the vulva, the reproductive system not included in body care? Why was that not included in the wholeness of our system? Why was it ghettoized? And so that was sort of the beginning of turning towards women's work, and that was about a decade ago. Yeah.
Same.
Long answer, I guess.
Well, that's a great answer. I wish that I grew up in a very blue collar Irish Catholic home outside of New
Mm,
York City. And my family did not talk about sex. They did not talk about bodies. It was, sex education was don't. And what I wish, and if I did not have children, but if I had had a daughter, I would have wanted her to know about how her body worked from a very young age. I
mm,
don't know why we don't tell young girls how to monitor their own fertility, how
mm,
to test for their own, how to look for their own cervical mucus, how to know when they're fertile.
mm,
We push our children into this medicalized, like your body is a separate thing to be controlled by someone else.
mhm,
And it's only been since I really started perimenopause that I had that wake up call. My body started yelling at me, wake up, wake up, wake up.
mhm,
Like I started doing jade egg right when I
mm.
started perimenopause, so like early 40s. And I wish I had known about these things all along.
Yeah, I think you're pointing to something that is slowly beginning a revolution, like period literacy, body literacy, not objectifying your own embodiment. And it's a manifestation of the larger split. Like I mean, if you grew up in Catholicism, then you have an entire 1,000-year tradition that says God is out there, up there, not here in the body, not through the body, that sexuality isn't what it actually is. It's like this manifestation of how the immaterial is brought into the material, like how a soul descends into the body. But that's all denied, the sort of fake split. And in
Mm.
the fake split, what you don't want to pay attention to this stuff because you should have your mind on spirit. That's a kind of a pervasive problem. But then, you know, the Catholic families have 13, 14 children then, and you still don't know what's going on. I mean, I would say, let me retract that because that's no longer true. But at the time when I was coming up, that was true.
Sure.
And I think you're pointing to another component of transmission between generations of women, and that if I've been shamed and I haven't been educated, then I won't talk to my own daughter about it. And in fact, I did a survey of our customers, and about 700 women responded and said, who do you talk to about sex, reproduction, all of those issues? And I offered partner, friend, mother, daughter, doctor. you know, and across the board, across all generations, the hardest person to talk to was the mother.
Mm.
Like, where else are you going to learn? Like they don't know their mom's birth stories, mom's period stories, what mom likes sexually, what her experience with rape, abuse, abortion, menopause, any of that stuff is. So by opening it up and just saying, here's how it is for me, it's like such a beautiful gift to your daughter
It is.
and to your mother if you're a daughter. Like go ask her. Let her share that incredible part of her life that she's been, we say you're riding on 40 years of bleeding or bearing when you hit menopause, unless you had a surgical intervention like you or my daughter-in-law's had that also. Like you're riding on 40 years of that. And to come to this point in your life where suddenly you're freed of that obligation is not only wonderful, but it's also destabilizing in a big way where you have to sort of reinvent almost all of your rhythms and cycles. And I think that education is just as important as period literacy for the young.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I
Mm.
I mean, when my mother had breast cancer. She didn't die from it. She died well after that. But when she was getting her surgery, she couldn't even tell me, like she asked me to go buy her the post mastectomy bra. She couldn't even like verbalize the bra size. She wrote it on a little piece of paper and slid it across the table like we were in the mob and she was giving me instructions for a hit. I was like, you can't just say 36B. This is so shameful for you, you know? And it really showed me how much that growing up like that had informed my idea about womanhood. Womanhood
Mm.
is so there's something inherently shameful about being a woman. And I love that the conversation is finally changing a little bit, or a lot of it.
Yeah, I was looking at, well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about your mother's cancer and also that you've lost her. And I'm sure she's tracking along with you somewhere in the etheric field as you learn these things and is being blessed by your growth. So I think what I wanted to go back to is in Catholicism, there's actually a very long tradition from early Catholicism on honoring the feminine, the divine feminine, in the Rose lineage and in the Magdalene and the Marian lineage, and that has been obscured, but it still exists there. And we could pull the thread instead of denying and pushing away everything about the religion of origin. We could pull those threads and rediscover the sacred feminine that would say, yes, my breasts, my womb, my pussy, it's all sacred. I'm holy, holy from head to toe. And look back at all of the traditions across the planet that were that way up until relatively recently. And some still are actually. Some are still saying that, that's the literally the womb is the holy grail.
Right. And it might be
Mm.
that my internal algorithm has shifted because I'm
Mm.
seeking it, but
Mm.
I feel like there's a huge awakening around
Hmm.
Mary Magdalene, the divine feminine, the goddess. I'm seeing more and more younger women too,
Yeah.
like women in their 30s, women in their 20s who are seeking to be connected not only to other women, but to themselves, to nature, to their cycle. Do you think this is a movement that's happening?
I call it the Neo-Gaian global underground.
I love
It's not only I mean, I thought we were going to talk about menopause, but let's talk about this.
it. We'll
Okay.
talk about menopause next. How long do I have you for?
Oh my God, I love this topic. It's not only happening, it's happening simultaneously, globally, emergently. And I think it's partially due to social media and partially due to jet travel. But you have these places where people convene in these sort of neo pagan hippie hotspots, the gypset, whatever, around the world, Tulum, Crestone, Goa, Arambol, like all over the planet. And the minute something happens there and it works to create a little bit more opening in the body, mind, heart, it immediately transits to other places on the planet. And so you have this emergent spirituality that has very defined practices without having a pope at the center, without having a dominant church council. And millions of people are doing it. And it's everything from, like I would say, the instead of it being the pyramid where there's somebody at the front speaking out to a bunch of people in pews, the model is the circle where everyone bears a component of holding up the space. And authority is a competence hierarchy, not a dominance hierarchy. So if you know something, okay, you can like offer that into the circle. You can lead that. If somebody's great at music, they can lead that. And that we're sort of peer mentoring one another into the capacities of holding space and leading and offering wisdom. Another piece is yes, there are dancing. I mean, yes, there is music like singing, like the choir used to be, but it's not just singing. It's very embodied. Like all these communities do ecstatic dance. They do variations on tantra or authentic relating. They're very much in the relational field between people. So it's about bringing things back into the body. They do a lot more seasonal honoring. Have you noticed lately how many people are like, oh my God, it's the moon, it's the seasonal shift, it's so and so in Jupiter, like that the attention is on astrology in the mystical esoteric way as much as an awareness that we live on a planet traveling through space, turning with the seasons, and that we're part of it. We're not like an observer, that we're not going out into nature. We are nature, like our whole body lives interdependent on the natural web. Every inhale, you're dependent on breath. Everything you eat, you're not a thing. You are part of this web, and that awareness of the filaments that connect you to all things is coming on very strong, and that is also part of the resurgence of the feminine, but that the feminine in this context is more like you have this first wave of like, oh no, it's the goddess, it's Mary, where you want to like go to a feminine deity. But I think the deepest wisdom is coming out of the Hindu traditions, where they talk about in every being is half and half mother and father. You're half your mother, you're half your father. You're the Ardhanishwara, you're the half Shakti, half Shiva. That polarity is what creates the world. It's not one or the other. And that when we return to a balance of honoring both equally, that's when you have the opportunity to have a culture that functions well. Strength and receptivity, you know, in one stroke. Anyway, that was also another long run on, but I hope you can see where I'm pointing. That the
Absolutely.
goddess is a correction. We're not going to be ruled by the feminine. We definitely need both.
We definitely do need both. And I think that I would like to, in the work that I'm doing, avoid the degradation of the male too, because we do need sacred masculine as well. We need that balance.
Totally.
We
Yeah, I
can't
love
just say,
I love
oh,
men, and they're suffering from not having enough of their own soft parts online. So, yeah,
do you include men in the work that you do?
not so much. No. I mean, I love men. I have three sons, and I just feel like I can't speak to that population well from the inside, and that they should speak to themselves. The
Absolutely.
the men who wake up, use do that as your mission field. Like there's been so much in the news in the last couple of weeks, even on these like massive abuses of women sexually and all kinds of things. And it makes me so sad. And you see all of the people, the men who are like, not all men. And I'm like, you know what? Not all men, but why don't you like it takes a lot of enablement for this to happen. So even if you're not actively doing it, here are like 10 things you could say to step up in front of your brothers when something's going sideways. We really need the people who are awake to be more active, and restoring a balance, a healthy balance.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you give me like a origin story? Like how did you go from being like a woman raised by a single widowed dad, yeah, to being who you are now? Like how did that just give me like a arc? Because I'm
Hmm.
always so curious how people got where they are. Because you've started several companies. You worked in a normie norm world for a while, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it's such a privilege to work there because you really see what it's like. So my mother's German and my dad's American, and my mother had me super young. She came to the States and never really found her place. So as a child, I went back and forth all the time. I grew up speaking German. We lived in Germany, Iran, France. She left when I was 8 and she was murdered when I was 11. and my father kind of took over in that window. So I was academically strong and went to college early at 16, met my husband the first day. And because I had such an ungrounded psychological life, I really bonded with him and got attached to him. And we married at 18, and I had my first child at 19. So we had three by 22. And I went to grad school for traditional thing, got an MBA, left school, went in traditional big time consulting, M&A work, strategy work, did that for a bunch of years, started my first company and then sold that. And coming out of that, did my first .com sort of startup with someone from a classmate in metals and heavy industry, which was like crazy. But I began to really understand how to like that almost you could solve any technical problem you want, but the success or failure of any company was these soft skills. Like, were you in integrity? Could you lead? Did people want to come to work? All of the, did you give your investors confidence? All the stuff that was about sort of plumbing the interior life of the self. So I'm at this point, like already raising, I had four kids by that point. I was still married to my husband. He was going through a little bit of a transition. I was running this company in Chicago, and I had hit like my utter capacity limit. And I hit the same age that my mother was when she was killed. And I had like something snapped in me, like I cannot go on. And I started then going to yoga, meditation, left the regular church, started singing mantra, started like really dropping into esoteric practices. I had already had a garden. I started really getting into plant medicines, all of those kinds of things at that time. When I'm saying that, at that time, it was primarily herbalism. The marriage failed. I met someone else. I married him, utterly in love, moved to California. He had a couple of kids. And not long after we got together, he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And in this period, I really began to understand the connection between the mind and the body, like healthy food. He was put on a very strict anti-cancer diet, no toxins, no toxins in our products, just like, I'm sure you experienced, no sugars. And learning about that felt somewhat like an awakening to how much I'd been buying the mainline inculcated, like the food supply, the drug supply, that whole narrative, which is just basically how do we feed as many people as possible, as cheaply as possible so they can go to work. It's really not about optimizing your individual health or well-being. So in that process, I really retooled our life to be focused on clean beauty, non-toxic environments, eating well. And then after that, I sort of hit menopause, and everything that I saw in the marketplace was farmy, toxic, put in the back of the grocery aisle or the drug aisle to say this is a pathology, or it's sexualized. Everything around intimate or sexual care was around the man's pleasure, purple jars with big lightning bolts on them, or around you being dirty and had to be hidden away. And I was like, this is actually like really hitting at the intersection of honoring the feminine and making it about beauty and body care. And I conceptualized this product line this way back in 2014. Started formulating in the kitchen, hired a chemist to work with, did some really beautiful package design, but put it on the shelf. Put it on the shelf because my youngest child was leaving home and I was ready for a break. I was done caregiving. Sold the house, sold the business, went around the world for 2 years with a new lover, had an amazing time. We wanted to start a yoga center, and we bought land in Hawaii to do that farm and started really doing herbal stuff there. And at that point, I was like, this idea about pure and effective women's products that are intimate wellness, not sexuality care, was still sticking around with me. I really wanted something that would be so beautiful you could put it on your bedstand and not have to hide it away, and that would be something you would use every day as a self-anointing or touch practice. And so, I'm sitting there in Hawaii in this cabin that has no windows, and plants are like going crazy all around me, and the birds are singing, the rain's coming in, and the guys are working on building out the buildings for the retreat center. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to start this company. And my partner at the time said, why are you doing that? You're retired. Why are you starting another company? You're finally like at the point where you don't have to do anything. You could just write, you could teach yoga. And I'm like, I know, but I feel like there's a whole mission in this. And it would be the first time in my whole work life that I was merging what I'm passionate about and my skill set in building something. So I'm going to do it. And I did a survey of about 3,000 women with a professional firm and identified what their needs were, and then went to an actual chemist with the recipes that I'd made. And he said, these are great, but they're not like shelf stable. They're not production ready. So we worked together to turn out the first 4 formulas, all based on traditional apothecary from around the world, Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, South American medicine, made the products, tested them. And then I was working on the brand, and I was with my daughter in New York visiting her. And she is a professor at Parsons School of Design. And her friend was sitting there at the table. And I was like, I really want to hire like the best beauty packaging person. I want these to be gorgeous. And she said, Christine, I did Rihanna's line. I did Fenty. I just won all the awards for that. I mean, I could help you. So she did. She helped me get the first round of the brand and the packaging. And we launched within a year of making the decision to do that survey. And it went slowly in the first year or two. Nobody understood the idea of intimate wellness, sexual wellness, body care. But then it went like from 700 to a couple of million. And then, just like, and then we created the category in such a way that Bloomingdale's picked it up and Neiman Marcus picked it up. And then we had a bunch of competitors, including like Procter and Gamble made a copycat brand, which used all of our colors and our language, but all kind of fakey copycat ingredients. So, I'm talking a lot about the product side, but the other piece was in the development of that. I really woke up to how the way the culture talks about women, shaming, degradation, objectification, all of that was the same way they were talking about the vagina and the vulva. Like there were 700 plus words for vulva or, pussy on Urban Dictionary, but like 6 were nice.
Right. Right.
And I was like, so that whole mission around how to use the products as a delivery vehicle for no shame, for messages of inclusion, self-reverence, that all came in the first couple of years of getting it off the ground. And now that I've been at it for 7 years now, I guess 6 in market, like you really do see that it's that message that connects with people. The products are beautiful, but it's that message of we can talk about anything that has really become the core of it. And that's a very fast narrative of 40 years.
I appreciate that though, because one of the things that is so appealing about the products that you've created, the line that you've created, is that we get a very distinct message that when you are menopausal, right, you don't deserve beautiful things anymore. Like you should just, put your terry cloth zip up house dress on from Sears and your fuzzy slippers and smoke your Marlboro lights and just shut up already, right? There's nothing we don't honor older women. And I love that this is specifically, I know that you are expanded, it's for all women, really, but I love that you started with something for women that is beautiful. And the whole point of it is to reconnect women to feeling beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, we were just doing this. I did a talk at the American Academy of Sexuality Educators this spring. And one of the first exercises I had the group do was to look at the internalized stories they have of female elderhood. And I mean, if as somebody's listening and they want to just think about that, like the tropes that live in us, there's like the bitter widow, the cougar, what you were just saying, the Marlboro smoking, like giving it all up, kind of, my life is over because I can't reproduce. I'm not like sexy in the same way I used to be. Like you
Right.
start to look at that, and not just from media, but like in your own family. I looked at the three women that I had contact with as elders over my life, and one was like super on it, awake, generative, excited, all the way till she was 96. One sort of like resentful and angry that she wasn't like young and beautiful anymore. Like you look at that first about how it lives in you, and then say, I was looking at research on what it means to be a happy elder. And, you know, part of those stories we could go into if you wanted, but I think there's a new story that's emerging. And I had a woman on my show, Alex Rotas, who's a photographer. And when she was studying media, she was doing media studies, and she was looking for images of older women. And she found like a bunch of stuff of people in like walkers and falling over in their bathroom and all that stuff. But what she noticed was there were a ton of women who were masters athletes who were in her community, and that she didn't see them represented anywhere. So she made it her mission to go out and start photographing elder women who were athletic and skiing and jumping and high jumping and running and, all of those things, and has begun to document the real story, which is that many, many, many people are extremely vital and active and mobile all the way through their whole life. They're just not represented. Another project was to look at all the women in their 70s and 80s who are still turning out beautiful art, like Isabel Allende's writing and Beatrice O's painting. And, like I think even Oprah's in her 70s, right? Like all of these public figures, you can be generative and creative your whole life long. There are other news stories that are emerging, like becoming sovereign, becoming wise, being in your pleasure, being in your beauty, and yeah, being honored, like your power that comes from wisdom and love, not from being an object that's useful to others.
Right. But I think that there's still a stigma around even the thought of a woman who, it's not even an age I want to like, I don't necessarily even want to assign a number to it, but a woman who is perceived as old, like not middle age even, but just like old, elderly, still being sexual. There's still so much stigma around that. I think people are terrified of that concept.
But they're wrong. You know, they're wrong. I mean, the data shows that women are still having sex well into their 60s and 70s. And if their partner is still alive, 80, one of the
Right.
things you really have is this really bad partner gap. Like men die 10 years earlier, and they're often older to begin with when they're married. So you might spend the last 15 years of your life without any sexual touch, unless you learn how to re-engage and find a new partner. And there's been a bunch of studies in like elder communities how the STDs are rampant, and like they're really getting it on for sure, but that the ratio of older men to older women isn't there. And then you get these stories of older women taking on younger lovers, or like finding ways to get touch or self-pleasure that are non-sexual, or like you cuddle with your friends but you self-pleasure your genitals. Like that's still there. So you're right about it. Maybe it's not even stigmatized. Maybe it's so undiscussed that it doesn't even have stigma. It's like it's like, ew, my grandma's doing it. Like nobody wants to talk about that. But it's also because there's I just got this, because it's also a bias that we still have that sex is for reproduction, even
Right.
if we do it for pleasure. So if you're doing it after your reproductive capacity is passed, then you're only doing it for pleasure. And there's the prohibition against pleasure is so intense that perhaps it's just that. Maybe it's not even aging. It's just that you're not supposed to have so much fun.
But it's also okay that sex changes, like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
okay that you're not like, in your 60s, do you really want to be, I'm going to be really graphic. Sorry. I'm a New Yorker with a potty mouth. Like, in your 60s or 70s, do you have like the desire? Maybe you've been there, done that. You don't want to be, fucking in a bar bath, you
Mm,
know?
I can't say anything about the bar bathroom, but the desire for penetration is there well into the mid 70s.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the research says that. But you're right about somewhere in mid 70s, late 70s, there's a switch where it's more about slow, sensual, sensory, more kissing, more touching. But And also say that in terms of longevity science and what 60 is now versus what 60 was in 1955 is a very
Wow.
different story. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh, sure.
I
Absolutely.
mean, it's like the 60-year-olds I know are starting companies and doing a headstand and,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, if you can stay off of the chronically ill bandwagon. Like you can avoid being on chronic medications for hypertension, diabetes, heart disease. And if you can do that, you're going to be vital, sexual, energized, sensual until you die. That's part of your natural embodiment. But if you're sick, if you're clogged up and stagnant, you're going to be tired. Everything's going to hurt. You're going to be dried out. Your vagina is going to hurt. It's going to get so dry that it feels like glass. Then you're definitely not going to want to have sex you
Right.
know so I feel like the conversation around menopause and aging and postmenopause, like a lot of attention is paid on the transition years,
Right.
but like the postmenopausal time is what we're talking about now. It's like if you want to live alive and vital, then you pay attention to the biostack. There are very specific predictors for how to keep that stack healthy. Like it's not just any kind of exercise. It's like hand strength and leg strength. It's not just any kind of exercise. It's full rotation on the joints. It's moving, it's keeping specific parts of the body flexible because then you have mobility. It's like shaking the lymph. And there are things that you can do. I mean, uh, there's herbs, there's hormones, there's phytoestrogens in the way you change your diet. There are things that you can do to mimic biohacking processes, like walk barefoot on the ground, do your breath work. If you can stay basically in a vital biostack and you have two other things that are predictable access points to happiness in your elder years. The other is a disciplined focus of attention that you are it's very tempting as you age to start to put more and more of your attention backward into nostalgia and or into worry about whether you're going to be okay as you age. You're going to have enough money. You're going to like whatever. You're going to never find love again. But the happiest elders put most of their attention on the current experience. They refer to their memories and nostalgia to reinforce positive understandings of their life and themselves, to like give them little joy, but they don't dwell on anything, no regrets. Like you accept what has happened and you put it in its proper category, which is over and done. And the attention toward the future is more around like what can I create, what am I reaching toward, like having goals or desires on adventures you want to have or ways that you can serve. Like so a happy elder is really like very present in the now with a little bit of attention on both of those ends. So that's the second key, the temporal awareness. And then the research says the third key is that cultivation of an inner atmosphere of joy, and that means that you're learning things because you love learning.
Right.
You're not doing Sudoku to keep your brain sharp. You're being neoplastic because life's amazing and it's such a privilege to be alive. And that is a very different like way of entering your 50s and 60s than like, I'm 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 done with, I'm over, you
Right.
know? So
Right.
you're bringing that up and you're bringing that to the world is you being part of this new story of elderhood where every day alive is a gift and we're honoring it by participating fully and none of this wham 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 victimy, kind of energy around getting older. And I take full responsibility in this new story for my health.
If someone needed a starting point, where would you point them? If someone was like really scared and really fearful, say
Oh,
we're talking to a girl, like say a girl, say we're talking to a woman who's like on the precipice of starting perimenopause, or they just started it and they're having that anxiety that comes with like, all right,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
changing again, everything's changing
Yeah,
again.
everything's
And
changing.
I don't know who I'm going to be on the other side of this because it's a portal. Menopause
Yeah,
is a portal that you go through,
totally,
and
totally.
you are a different person on the other side. And there's a lot of fear over who am I going to be when I'm through
Well,
this.
my first hit is find a women's circle. Don't hold it alone. Find a place where women are coming together and sitting together, multi-ages, not just women in perimenopause, but women who are on the other side of it for sure, who can
Right.
tell you new stories. And the fear thrives in ignorance. And you just need more examples of how it's joyful. So I find that there are more women's circles popping up all around the country than I've ever seen. The last 5 years has just been a huge influx in that. If you don't have somebody locally, find an online group, that, and I can send you a couple of links for that. Maybe you even want to host one. You're in a position as a social worker to hold space really beautifully with your background. And the ideal group size is 8 to 12 women, where everyone has a chance to speak, be reflected and heard, where there's guest speakers or people who have knowledge around the symptoms and all of that available. There are also a lot of menopause centric brands and portals that are coming up. We did a partnership with a company called Hey Perry, Perry, and Perry is really beautiful on educating on perimenopause so that at least that it's not your food allergy that's causing your problem. It's just your estrogen fluctuating. And also to like really, really know that all that's happening is you're running out of eggs. That's it.
Right.
It's not about your value as a human being. You're running out of eggs. Your hormones start to sputter when you're running out of eggs. And when you're done with eggs, you stop bleeding and you stop putting all the energy into producing the hormones that would support making a baby. And when you don't have to use energy there, energy goes into other things. It could go into making your amazing next painting. So if you're starting out with, like, I don't know where I'm at, I would say find, like, make a little love message to yourself. Like, you can say, I include the fear, I include my confusion. And in this confusion, I'm going to reach out to people who've been through it. I'm going to find a women's circle. I'm going to educate myself, read a couple of books, listen to a few podcasts, and then I'm going to go into a new relationship with my body, cultivate the idea that my body and I are in a constant dialogue and I can be with whatever arises. And if I have difficulty being with what arises, then I'll get help, So more and more, it feels like learning to hold more of your own experience without panicking or blaming others or shaming is what personal growth is about. I can hold it. I can hold it without making someone else wrong or making the culture wrong.
I love that. And I love that you've incorporated so many things that and I think a lot of women are attracted to with the company that you've created that includes a spiritual and emotional, a spiritual aspect to all of these things and reconnecting women to their bodies, to the holiness of ourselves that I think it's been everyone gets so caught up in like the day to day. How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to get to work? How am I going to buy food? But all that's noise, right? It's all noise. And everything is in our soul, is inside. And to reconnect to that and to have a daily ritual where you have something like the honor bomb and you're just connecting with yourself in a simple daily practice.
I don't, I love that you're bringing it back to that. And I'll say, here are the rituals that I've incorporated into my life. And I think that people are to sanctify your life is to become conscious. This is like real yoga, to become conscious of the privilege of being alive and to do the things that remind you of that privilege throughout the day. So in the morning, when I get up, I light candles every morning. Like I have a little home, might call it an altar, but it's not really to anything else. It's just like a moment of quiet. I light a candle. I say, I do my thanks. I take conscious breaths. I often, like whatever the dream was that was with me in the night, I bring that in. I try to ping out to people that I know specifically who are in need in the moment and like send them some love. And then I ask directly for what I want on that day. Like even if it's insanely big and ridiculous, like this is a day for miracles. And then I go about my morning. After the shower, I do the ritual bathing with like the scrub and I put on the oil. And then I use an honor balm at night as a grounding into my personal care. I rub it on the vulva, I put it on the whole pubic bone area that replenishes the skin. And at night I do a similar closing ritual with my with my day, like reviewing the day, giving both gratitudes, things I wish I had done better. Is there anything that I need to make amends for or clear out, so that I'm digesting in real time how, like, I'm not letting anything get sticky,
Mm.
sticky makes sicky. That's a terrible acronym, but it really does. Like the things that stick in our systems that aren't processed really are hard for the whole body, mind, heart system to handle over time. I have the sense that throughout the day, like I have a beautiful teacher who said when you first start meditating, you might meditate 20 minutes in the day or an hour in the day. And then you start to meditate 5 or 10 minutes in every hour. And then it's like 10 seconds out of every minute until you get to this point where you're like, it's like you're oscillating between a state of unification consciousness and calm meditation and a state of doing, that you're always in the sort of the oscillation of that, and everything becomes really infused with light, so that if I am running carpool or cooking for somebody, or like I was on the I got one of those little green Bissell portable carpet shampooers, and I'm on the floor with the little shampooer, like shampooing, but like kind of meditating at the same time. Like I can do the daily tasks of living infused with the light. And that's a different, like everything. It's not like it has to be set aside from your regular life, so
Right.
that you're like you're walking more as a integrated field, I guess.
Yeah.
And that, yeah.
And it sounds like if you practice and practice and practice, you don't have to remove yourself from society, live on a mountain cliff and
Oh my God.
just and be just this being all by yourself with no outside stimuli to be enlightened, right? It sounds like if you are willing and you're willing to do the small steps, you can you can have a holy life in a day-to-day way and still be like a regular person. Because
Totally. Like this is so, what a beautiful way to like bring this all together. Mm. So love that you said that. Okay, so that ascension theology of like going off into a cave and isolating is, I know where that entered the fractal of human consciousness, but it is in no way a woman's spirituality. I say like the philosopher Descartes, Cartesian taxonomy, I think, therefore I am. Like no woman would ever say, I think, therefore I am. It's like something that is like that guy, Descartes, he was he's like a rich white guy sitting alone in his library on his fainting couch, like trying to figure out what his purpose was while other people fed him, cook for him, cleaned for him. He had no responsibilities for touching the things that made his embodiment possible. That disconnection is part of the illness. But a woman whose life is often defined in the relational field of like bearing, nurturing, making things, cooking, cleaning, gardening, all the stuff you do to like keep your life going, that experience is very different. Even the historical record doesn't reflect like a woman's art, like the artistry in the traditional pre feminism women going out into the work world, the artistry of a woman's kitchen, the
of
artistry
weaving, of
of
weaving,
anything, of
medicine,
weaving,
of
of
sewing.
of yeah, very ephemeral, like very, and also the things that are done daily and disappeared daily, like
Mm.
like the sand mandala of feeding your family
Oh,
beautifully.
sure. The
You know,
homemaker, the making of a home,
all of that
the
stuff
home
is like
keeper.
when you notice, like think of a time when you were cooking for someone, or like making a birthday cake or something like that. Let's say we're making a cake and you're like putting the finishing touches on it, and you're both in the momentary suspension of reality, as like the frosting hits in just a certain way and the beauty and the balance comes together, and you're also expecting their delight when they see it. Like if that's not holy, what is? And that there's no caving.
Right.
This is no mountaintop. This is the descent of the light into your actual daily task coming through your hands, because that's the whole point of being in a body. This is the game. Like once I died in 2017, I had a near death experience. And it was really a beautiful moment to be out of the body. Like it was stunning and gorgeous and peaceful and amazing. And I was hovering out there and I had to make a decision. Do I want to stay in the body or not? And I had this thought, but I love life so much. And in that moment, boom, I was back in my body. I woke up, my family was all around the hospital bed, and I made an actual choice to be here. And the message from that was once you're out of the body, you're out of the body. Like it's true, it's fine. But while you're here, your job is to enjoy it as much as possible, to experience it all as much as possible and not problematize it and be in like the utter joy of life. And so that's what I would say is the making Rosebud, doing the village, doing the farm and eco village on Hawaii, doing radiant farms, raising a family, all of this stuff. It's beautiful. It's like an adventure. And if I have one message like to give to everybody is like love this life, bring as much joy as you can into every part of your life. Have a look and include the things that are stuck in the system from your own life or your family's life. Get help in evacuating those so that you can be in more joy, whether those stories are from things you've actually experienced, things that are stuck in your family, things that are stuck in the culture. Follow that joy. That's your job. And out of that, everything beautiful is born. Yeah.
Oh my God. I think we should actually end there because that was absolutely amazing.
All right. So it
I
ended up being like more about preaching than about menopause, but
it's
yeah.
I am beyond grateful that I'm like a stranger on the internet who follows you and that you took the time today to meet with me means a lot to me as someone
I'm
who's just starting on their entrepreneur.
utterly supportive, utterly supportive. Make it happen. Like we're all lighting each other up. Make it happen. I think it's so exciting that you're switching into this domain
Yeah.
and bringing all your skills and experiences. Very interested to hear how you incorporate your what I would call medical abuse
Yeah.
uh, into your story and how
Yeah.
you incorporate the understanding of your mother's breast cancer into your story, premature or surgically induced menopause, how that fits into it. Like
Yeah.
you have so many direct experiences from where you can serve. It's going to be very interesting to see where you go.
Yeah. I'm really excited to serve and I really appreciate you and you're I'm gonna you're fucking amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, potty mouth, Kate. No, I do. I say the same thing. I say like
You
you
do you have
you cannot take can't
do you
take
have
the
priestess
Chicago out
training?
of it.
Do
Hmm?
you do you have like formal priestess training or is this just the life you're living?
That's just my life.
That's awesome. You were just born a priestess.
I wasn't. I mean, maybe I was,
You were. You were.
and it went underground for a while, but it's definitely happening in
Yeah.
a new way. Like I don't know where it's going. I'm in that emergence myself. I love Rosebud. Love what's happening with Rosebud. My daughter and I are having a fantastic time with it. But more and more these gatherings of women and
That's my big
yeah,
goal is to have retreats. That's my
yeah.
big goal. I want to do like a beautiful like a ceremony, like a stepping in a threshold ceremony. And I want to do them across the age range at
The
each.
where are you physically now?
I'm physically in Florida.
We have a lot of elders down there. I bet it would be
Yeah.
really welcome.
Yeah. I think it would be really
We'll talk
fun.
we'll talk more about that.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Christine. I so appreciate you coming on the show, and I really appreciate your generosity with me. Take
Take care.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Your Magical Midlife. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. You can follow me on Instagram at Your Magical Midlife. You can also check out my offerings on my website, which is www.yourmagicalmidlife.com. I offer individualized coaching for women 45 plus who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-box thinkers. I also offer luxury retreats that include ritual, rites of passage, and ceremony for women 45 and beyond. I'd be so excited to work with you. Also, if you're feeling kind and you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star review, as it opens this podcast to a broader audience and keeps me in those pesky algorithms. Thank you so much for your partnership with me. I appreciate you. Have a great week.